I'm here at the Burwood Spinal Unit in Christchurch, New Zealand, and tomorrow it's going to be 2 months since the accident. So yeah, I'm in a wheelchair and no use of my legs at the moment, basically paralysed from the T12 or the lower thoracic or the L1, which is the upper lumbar down. I've had some feeling coming back in my legs, but yeah, there's not a lot happening down there, and I just thought I'd go over what's been happening. So I've still got no memory of the crash itself, although I've heard the Zello transmissions, like the voice messages I sent to my mate, and from that I'm not completely clear what's going on. I'm waiting on the report from the rescuers. I'll go chat to them, so I'm intending to make a video about that at some point. But yeah, I went to the hospital the same day, had the operation, and the next couple of days I probably don't remember from a couple of minutes before the accident. Still nothing has come back about that. And the first 8 days I was in intensive care, and even after that I was really tired. So the accident was the 14th of June. I had my first go in a wheelchair a week and a day afterwards. After an hour I was pretty tired and was back into bed. And yeah, the day after that I found out that I was still on some drugs. So off the morphine, that was definitely good for the brain. Yeah, things were a bit crazy in that early time, not to mention trying to sleep. 2 weeks after the accident, I was starting to feel better, but still had good days and bad days. On one of the bad days I felt like just sitting forward and just relaxing and chilling out in the wheelchair. And then I felt a bit faint when I was standing up for longer than usual and pushing myself up. I did faint a couple of times because I was up for so long. Not that long in those days, but longer than I was used to. And it turned out that they had to COVID test me that night, and probably COVID had a bit to do with it. Had high temperatures for a day and a half, but really it was a massive inconvenience. That was the main issue for me with COVID, because it meant that we had to push the dates for going back to Australia back, and it's a little bit expensive staying in France. Yeah, Annecy is probably the paragliding capital of the world, so I had heaps of visitors. Seems like everyone from Oz and New Zealand was over there, plus a bunch of people I know that live in Europe, which is great, but had hardly time to do anything. But I realised it probably did make things go a bit quicker once I had the isolation, once they finally started enforcing that the last few days before going to Australia due to the pandemic, or my COVID positive result. So the flight to Oz was a piece of cake. Got to lie down in business class, just a touch expensive. But yeah, I was probably recovered a bit more than we thought, and there was a lot of legal medical stuff to be able to get out of hospital and have someone responsible take the reins. And yeah, so we arrived, no dramas, in Australia, into an emergency ward, and then into a tent the next day, and waited till there was a bed free in the Orthopaedics ward. But the spinal unit, when we finally saw them the next week, they said they're pretty full up, so it's a pretty long waiting list. So the next meeting or something after that, they actually suggested that we go to New Zealand, and that's where it ended up. The time wasn't wasted in Brisbane though. I had a lot of strength building to do. Core strength is one of those things I've put off my whole life, really. And yeah, we did all kinds of exercises. Nothing as grueling as that administered by my sister, who's a physio. But yeah, made some good progress. A little bit of input from the spinal team too. Holly was great. And yeah, we had one of the physios, when I told them that I was doing transfers from the wheelchair to the bed in France instead of that goddamn hoist, which is really uncomfortable. He said, "We're not in France." But another guy, he seemed to get all amped up. He was a guy, I think he was a Nick as well, with some spinal experience. And he was like, "They were doing transfers on the board." Well, he upped the ante and got me doing direct transfers, and I've been doing them ever since, so that was really good. So lots of visitors from friends and family in Brisbane, since I've lived there most of my life. But with a couple of days notice, we snuck away to New Zealand, the late flight, Mum and I, and checked in, They jabbed something up my nose, even though I'd had it just done the day before I left Australia, and COVID positive again. What the hell? I felt fine, of course, but I did 2 more tests after that, so 4 tests in 3 days, and it probably was some leftover from France, and I was back in the blue, but at least I had my own room for a week. And yeah, the sessions here with physio have been more frequent, and it's been really good. So on the first day I was doing wheelies on the wheelchair. A couple of days ago, or was it yesterday, I think I had the safety things taken off, so I'm on my own now. And yeah, doing lots of exercises. Last week I did some work with the transitions crew, which is basically guys that have been in wheelchairs for decades. And we went around the block and we've done a few sort of drills, jumping curbs and stuff like that. And it's good to get a bit of input from people with life skills other than doctors that tell you it's all, well, sometimes when you talk to a doctor and hear their side of the story, it's all pretty grim. So Spinal Clinic is where you get all the specialist knowledge so people know how to deal with the problems we normally face. But it's not that high tech. I tell people it's basically like you've got to learn how to pee, poo, and jump on and off a wheelchair, and that's it. Then you can be released into the community. But it's not too far off that. I've been had a great run with the bows, and I've learnt to do it myself in the last week, and it's been no mistakes and very regular and a piece of cake every morning since I got here. And the next thing is the intermittent catheters. So at the moment I've got one that's in there for 2 weeks at a time, but I've got to get to a stage where I can do it myself, pop it in, pop it out, and it's all done. So I'll be starting that on Monday. And the other thing that doesn't work for me is the bum, the private parts. The feet are all numb, so hopefully a bit will come back. I've had some feeling come back to my legs. I think I have. It's good to see those videos I made of what I could feel. So I can do hot and cold and pinpricks on my left leg and my right lower leg, but not my right thigh. And I've got various bits of touch and some feeling down to the inside of both ankles, depending on if you get the right spot. But yeah, let's hope that a bit more comes back. Probably a fair chunk would have come back by now, but it can take up to years, and it's highly variable, and you just got to keep trying. So of course, overall, it's definitely disappointing that I can't do what I used to do. I used to have a pretty good life, but there's heaps of stuff I can still do, and there's a chance that I'll get some recovery anyway, but that's not what I'm relying on. I'll try, but there's lots of other things I can do as I am. And yeah, it's funny that sometimes you take things for granted, like having a poo can be one of life's great satisfactions, and then you've got to relearn how to do that. It's a bit like starting a new life, being a baby, trying to get everything to work, but not knowing exactly how much you'll get back. But yeah, I'm still alive. So there's been a few more visitors here in New Zealand, but it's a lot of getting down to work. But yeah, I've got a lot of messages, especially in the last week, asking how I am, so that's partly pushing me to make this video. Yeah, I have to thank all the medical staff who are just always enthusiastic to help. Although I got one nurse the other day saying something about me being alive and kicking. I'm like, well, the kicking part, not sure about that. And they always ask if you want a hand. I was like, oh, I need some legs at the moment. But there are some people here who've got higher breaks than me, so it definitely could be a lot worse. A couple of days ago here we had the goal setting meeting. It was actually after 2 weeks, but basically when you enter, sort of estimating when you're going to get out of there and what you have to do. So you talk to each of the different departments, and they're all basically pretty happy with me. I've probably got the most things to do in urology, so getting rid of the old pee bag. And the nominal time is 12 weeks, so minus the 2 I've already done. But we're going to have another meeting in 4 weeks' time, and if everything's sorted, it's possible that we might make that a the discharge meeting. Yeah, so could be out of here in mid-September, but we'll see how it goes. I would definitely like to be able to do some 180 transfers, so you wheel into a toilet and pop on off your wheelchair, and some floor to wheelchair transfers. That looks insane, but it'll be a nice skill to have in your toolbox. So basically I've had a full recovery from all the non-spinal stuff quite some time ago, and now I'm just learning how to deal with that and get my core strength up to par, so I don't need the lower body anymore. It's been something I've been trying to work on my whole life, the core strength. Finally a bit extra motivation, but who knows how much of the other stuff I'll recover. It could take years, and might as well give it a go. So thanks everyone for your support, and yeah, all going well.